Welcome back to another episode of Guitar Talk with Todd here at Todd Beebe Music. Thank you so much for checking in today. You know I really appreciate it. Please hit that subscribe button in the lower right hand corner. I really appreciate that, and thank you guys so much for checking in. We always have so much going on here: music memorabilia, product reviews, artist interviews, lessons, and guitar reviews, which is what we're going to be doing today. Please comment, find me on Facebook at Todd Beebe Music, and like I said, thanks so much for checking in. Today we have a beautiful 1976 Gibson Les Paul Custom. This is one of the, right in the heyday of the Norlin era for Gibson guitars. Let's kind of talk about that a little bit. Right after the heyday of Gibson and the Ted McCarty era there, you know, the 60s, late 60s dawned, and from 1969 to 1985, right up until Henry Juskowitz and his team bought Gibson in the 80s, Norlin ran Gibson and owned Gibson, and for years the Norlin era right there from 1969 to 1985 really had a bad vibe. To this day it kind of does with a lot of people, but it's funny, I'm starting to see a whole new appreciation for the Norlin era, and I'm glad about that, because I don't think you could just write off an entire era of guitars. I mean, there was a lot of great guitars made during the Norlin era, and I'm holding one of them right here. Lots of great things. We're going to talk about Norlin more as we kind of get going here. This guitar, like I said, comes right out of the Norlin era, and for a long time there, you could pick these up for really inexpensively. This is actually one of mine, and I did purchase this guitar in the late 90s, which was right around the heyday of people hating on the Norlin era, because at that time you had the golden era of the 50s, and you also know how much I love 90s Gibson, and Gibson was making a huge comeback, and the quality was just impeccable. Anything you can find from Gibson in the 90s to me is just fantastic. And at the time, this came up for sale, and it's actually in great condition, and I did not pay very much for this guitar at all. It was like they were giving it away, because the person that had it was like, that's one of those Norlin eras, they're junk. But this is in the beautiful wine red, which is a real popular color on Les Pauls. We've got the gold hardware, T-top pickups, which were real popular in the mid-70s with Gibson. We're going to talk about those more as well. And Nashville-style tunematic bridge, stop bar, tailpiece, typical of what you would expect here on a Gibson Les Paul Custom. This has one of the famous, or infamous, however you want to look at it, pancake bodies, which we're going to see more in the case, where we actually have maple, mahogany, and we're going to kind of look at that more too. Ebony fingerboard with the block inlays, and then we've got our typical Gibson Les Paul Custom headstock with the diamond in the center, mother of pearl, Gibson mother of pearl logo, truss rod cover that says Les Paul Custom, gold hardware, obviously going on up here too on the Gibson tuners. Like I said, we're going to get some close-ups of this whole thing in the case. We are always secured by Straptight on this show. The reason why they have such a bad reputation, that whole era, is what I was just talking about a minute ago, and again, we're going to kind of get into this more when we're doing close-ups in the case. They started to cut corners and do things like what are called the pancake bodies. So instead of an entire solid mahogany body, you had a piece of mahogany and another piece of mahogany, and they were put together, and then you had a piece of maple in the middle. Gibson at the time would say that was more for strength and stuff, but really what it was is, you know, if you've got half a body laying around and another half a body laying around, slap them both together, you've got a whole body that's cutting corners. So a lot of that kind of stuff was happening, and Gibson started to really get a bad rep during that time, and I do have to admit, kind of towards the end of the Norlin run there, it was kind of like, man, I've seen some stuff that wasn't too great. And Henry Jeskowitz, as much as people hate on him, I always have said you got to give Henry credit. He came in, he turned the ship around, got it back on track. 90s Gibson, that's all Henry. And those are, in my opinion, the best guitars Gibson has put out since the 50s, that 90s era. So, yeah, Henry's ship kind of went off the rails there at the, at the end of the train, sort of went off the rails at the end of his run as well. We had like the robot tuners that everybody was hating on and all that stuff. And again, I don't really mind the robot tuners. You know, I think it was kind of cool. They were giving people options. Go ahead and comment. Let me know what you guys think. There was some things that were starting to get a little bit strange, like, what? At the end of the era there. And but I don't know. I don't ever hate on Henry because, like I said, going back to 1985, Norlin was running the company, and there was some stuff coming out where it was like, whoa, the same thing. And at that time, he's the guy that put them back on track. So you can't just completely hate on Henry. But anyway, this T-top pickups in this one, which are called that. I'll show some pictures of the pickups on here so you can see the bobbin on the inside of the pickups has a T on it, top, bottom, and the T for top. And Gibson started doing that. They never officially called them T-top pickups, but because of that T that was on there, people through the years started calling them T-tops. And it's weird, in 2022, when this is being recorded, these are now pretty highly sought after pickups. They have a beautiful, you know, crisp tone to them. If you're getting, you know, cleans like I am right now, they clean up fantastic and sound. Just have a great, nice, bassy, but yet crisp at the same time. That was all on the neck pickup. If I want to crank this up and get some distortion, you've got everything you need there on that bridge pickup as well. Great. I mean, leads, obviously. Neck pickup. Now's the neck pickup. Pickup. So yeah, just a great guitar. Like I said, we're going to talk about a lot of the details on this and a little bit more stuff going on with Norlin here and what we were talking about before when we check her out in the case. Let's go ahead and do that right now, as a matter of fact. So here we go. Let's get some close-ups of this 1976 Gibson Les Paul Custom from the Norlin era. Check her out. Okay, guys, so here is the case for the Gibson Les Paul 1976 Les Paul Custom. This is not the original case. I know this for a fact because I'm the one that bought it. When I got this guitar in the late 90s, it did not have a case. The original was long gone, and I picked up one of these brown, you know, we've had these on here many, many times. These are the 90s Gibson cases. This one actually needs a little bit of repair. I need to just re-glue the ribbon back in here. No big deal, but the case just kind of flops open when you do it. Like I said, not the end of the world. I just haven't had time to get to it yet, but not a big deal. Interesting, too, we've got the fur on this one of the earlier ones with the pink shroud that later turned to silk, but they originally came out, they were the pink fur like this. And there she is. Let's get some close-ups of this and start talking about this right away. There's those T-top pickups we were talking about. T-tops were used from about 1965 till about 1980. 1980 is kind of pushing it because, you know, it was one of those deals where if they found a pair laying around, they'd slap them in a guitar. But by 1980, they were pretty much starting to phase out. Around 78 or so is pretty much when they were done. But you will still see, you know, some models that had them as far as like 1980. I believe I've seen some even in like 1981 models and early 80s, like I said, if they were laying around. But the T-tops are great pickups. Again, they're called that because if you look at the bobbin, it's got the T on it to designate top from bottom, and Gibson started doing that on those. And then they just came to be known as T-top pickups. An incredible sound. They're just awesome pickups. Everything's all original on this. Nashville style 2-pneumatic bridge. This one's pretty worn. At some point I'm going to have to replace this, but it still does the job. It's got a couple of notches in like the high E where it was tried out in different locations. That all happened before I had the guitar, but it still does the job, you know, quite well. Got the 2-volume, 2-tone that are labeled there on the Custom. Very popular thing there, especially in the 70s. Can sort of see in the light, this is a 3-piece maple top. So you've got like the right there, and that's one piece. This center is one piece, and then we've got the third piece here. So that was one of the things that Henry did away with when he took over Gibson in 1985. He was like, nope, we're going to just solid, you know, 2-piece book-matched maple tops, and you won't see the 3-piece like that anymore during the Henry era. He got rid of that, and I'm glad he did, because, again, that's one of the cutting corners things that Norlin did, and that's kind of how they started getting a bad reputation. Let's go all the way up the neck here. Beautiful ebony fingerboard. Got these really low frets, which is why Les Pauls were started to be known as the fretless wonders in the 70s, and these are definitely a good example of that. All original. I've never had this refretted. Super low. It's like you're not even playing on this thing when you're, you know, some people like that, some people don't. I love the feel of this guitar, so I have no problem with that at all. Crack right there in the ebony fingerboard. I have never fixed that. That crack has been there as long as I have owned the guitar, and it has never, you know, grown at all. I've kept a close eye on it, and it's been fine, so you can't really feel it. It hasn't affected anything, and again, something that happened before I owned the guitar, but I've never dealt with that or fixed it, and there's really no reason to. It doesn't affect the playability at all. Then we have the headstock right there, mother of pearl, Gibson logo with the Gibson diamond on there, and the Les Paul Custom truss rod cover. Let's flip this over and take a look at the back. Okay, so here is the back. I'm trying to focus in here. I've got the control cavity for the 3-way selector switch and the control cavity for the volume and tone controls. Okay, so I'm going to show some pictures here of the inside of the control cavity right there, the 2-volume, 2-tone controls. Here's something that you don't see either, and the Norlin era was doing this. They would put like this metal plate over the volume and tone controls, and then, you know, of course, I'm going to put a picture here up of with that removed as well. The thought was that that helped with interference and stuff like that. You've seen various things like that. I used to know a guy that put like aluminum foil inside of the control cavity, covering them up. It doesn't hurt, and it kind of helps, but at the end of the day, tests have kind of showed through the years that a lot of this stuff doesn't really do much of anything as far as interference goes. So again, by the time Henry took over, the stuff like this was just not happening anymore. Like I said, all just typical stuff you would have here. Mahogany back. We have binding, multiple binding front and back on here like you would have on a Les Paul Custom. That has a Schaller strap lock, obviously not original. Again, that was on the guitar when I bought it, but thank you Straptight. I can just leave that right on there, and Straptight Straplocks go right over that when I put a strap on, and we are secure. So check out Straptight. All right, there is the neck. Going up here again, I'm trying to get focused in. And then we've got the Gibson gold tuners here on the headstock, which are, you know, this is a prime example of a 1976. Here's one thing I want to talk about too, the volute. That was a very popular thing on 70s era Gibsons. You will see that little, it like pops out like that, and they started doing that for extra stability, but the thought was that because the headstock breaks are real common on Les Pauls, that volute would help. Some people argue it doesn't, some people argue it does. So you know, again, it's just something different. You don't see that anymore, and that is definitely from the 70s era Gibson. Okay, one interesting thing, too, if you look at the angle on this headstock, that string doesn't even, the angle it's going back at coming off of the nut is almost not even there. It's almost going straight back. So that was something they tried to do. They lessened the headstock angle, and then they put that volute on right there, on the right behind the nut to reinforce that area of the headstock. And between the different pitch of the headstock and the volute, they thought it kind of would strengthen things. Obviously, when Henry took over, they got rid of stuff like that, and they angled that headstock back like the classic 1950s models, which is what people preferred. Let's take a look at the side of this so we could talk about that pancake body that we were referring to earlier. Okay, so it can be a little bit hard to see in certain lighting, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about right there. There's like that center seam right in the middle of the side there. So basically you have a maple top, and then you have a slab of mahogany. That really thin seam you see in the middle is actually another slab of maple, just like the maple top. And then you have another slab of mahogany, hence where the term pancake body came from, because it's stacked like that. This is definitely the heaviest Les Paul that I own. It weighs in at close to around 10 pounds. That's pretty hefty for Les Paul. Everybody I hand this to says, wow, this thing's like a tree trunk, and it most definitely is. But again, that's one of the, you know, cost-cutting things that the Norlin era did from 1969 to 1985. And that was one of the things when Henry came in, he was just done with it. Actually, the pancake bodies phased out before Henry came in. But again, that's just one example of, you know, stuff that Norlin was doing to kind of cut corners. And they kind of got a bad rep. And to this day, some people still, you know, have a bad look down on the Norlin era, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Really nice how that binding is yellowing after all these years too. That's just really cool. That's all natural relicing right there. Nothing Nothing out of the shop. That's all happening from natural age from a 1976 Les Paul here. Okay, and one more full shot there in the pink case. Just a beautiful, beautiful guitar. Gibson Les Paul Custom 1976 in wine red, right out of the Gibson Norlin era. Alright guys, so there is the Les Paul Custom in the case. Let's take her for a test drive like we always do. I'm just going to do a lot of blues stuff here, some slide, slow blues, and you know, it's a little bit more mellow tone, and then let her rip like I always love to as well. So check her out. Here is how she sounds. guys, so there is the Gibson Les Paul Custom in wine red from the Norlin era, 1976. Like I said, just a beautiful piece. Don't ever just write off a whole era like that. The Norlin era had a lot of not so great stuff, but it had some awesome stuff too. And I'm glad to see the Les Paul Customs and a lot of the things that came out during that era, T-top pickups and all that stuff, are starting to really be revered as they should, because there's a lot of great things that came out of the Norlin era, and so don't ever just write off an era like that. So thanks so much, you guys. Please comment below. Let me know what you think about the Norlin era, or if you have a 70s era Gibson or you're looking for one. They are definitely a different breed than obviously the 50s or what we have going on now, or even 90s Gibson, which was completely different because Henry was getting the company as far away from this as he could at the time to get it back on track. So it is a whole different breed. But let me know. Please comment. Thanks, you guys, for checking in. Find me on Facebook at Todd Beebe Music. And like I said, please hit that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner. We post content weekly here at Guitar Talk with Todd on Todd Beebe Music. And we have artist interviews, all kinds of stuff, guitar lessons, product reviews. Like I said, check out my review on Straptight Straplocks that I did last week. We're always secured by them, so check that one out. I'll put the link below. And thank you so much, you guys. We will see you guys again really soon, and please join us. Stay safe and love your dogs. Take care.